Hi, welcome to the Women Birth Collective's Pregnancy and Postpartum Summit. I'm Melissa Chin Casey, and we're talking to Victoria Torres, who is the founder of Moon Womb Maternity. She provides traditional, holistic, and evidence-based support for women in their journey of growth and expansion. She's a birth worker, a mother, a placenta specialist, herbalist, and she's on her path to becoming a midwife. Thank you so much for joining us, Vicki.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start this is such an exciting topic for me because I often refer to birth as ceremony, but I don't have a traditional grounding in what ceremony is. So it's my own definition of ceremony, which is um, just anything that's like a deep internal transformation, right? But I recently heard a new definition that ceremony is actually a service to Mother Earth. So to start off, would you kind of give your definition of what ceremony is and let us know what traditions you're pulling from, what traditions maybe you're experienced in, what kind of ceremonies you facilitate for people. And yeah, just give us a good overview of what that's about.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I am originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina in South America. And so are my mother and my father and their fathers, their parents. And I grew up in a very Eurocentric way of living. And it wasn't until a little bit after high school that I started my process of remembering and connecting to the land that I live on and remembering that I belong to the earth and the earth belongs to me and is a part of me. And in that remembrance, I found myself um, to different traditions, earth-based traditions. You know, so I sun dance with Lakota elders and I moon dance with Mexica elders and I sit in ceremony with various, ceremonial leaders from different traditions that teach me and guide me. And so with my work through moon dance, the last 8 years, I've received the blessing, permission to facilitate sweat lodge ceremonies for my community, for the women in my community, and um, coming of age ceremony for the children and blessing way ceremonies for the mothers, and just hold life as sacred, And so to answer the other question for me, ceremony, it could be many different things, and there's certainly ceremonies that have specific intentions at specific time of the year with specific protocols and instructions, right, that were handed down in a certain way. But ceremony is life. And so, like, that's like the extension of my work, and that's what I really focus my work on, like making our life sacred, like it was intended to be. And that means like that can mean many different things for many different people. For me, I think my spirituality is something very practical. It's something that I practice in every day. Like my ceremony is life. So how we drink water in the morning, how we greet our children when they wake up, how we greet the sun. And so my birth work, my path as a birth keeper is just an extension of how I see my life. So how I greet the mothers, how I connect to the mothers, um, how the birth, my intention at the birth, how I hold my space at the birth, it's all a ceremony. A ceremony, I think, ceremony is an invitation to remember the sacredness of our humanity, of our experience here, of our short experience here on this earth. And um, how we do that, is going to be very personal for each and every one of us, but it's just life. Ceremony is life.
Mm, yes, yes. I've had the pleasure of being with you at births, and I do get a sense of that you're holding space for that person who's giving birth in a very respectful way. And I think that something that I read that you wrote was that you like to help a person give birth from a place of their own empowerment. And can you kind of describe what that means and um, how, as people who are preparing to give birth, how we can kind of bring that in and what we can use to think about birth differently, especially when we're birthing with teams of people who maybe we don't know are in the birth room. Like sometimes there's, if it's in the hospital, sometimes there's doctors and students and other teams that are there to observe and to learn. How do we birth from a place of sacred empowerment?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
I think yeah, I always like to keep it very like in perspective how small my role really is as a birth worker in the life story of this child and mother. You know, we come in for a very short time, sometimes the whole 9, 10 moons if we're blessed, and into the postpartum, but sometimes it's not, right? We come into this family's life for a little bit, and my role is really just to like do a small part in hopefully letting these families remember how sacred this experience is, right? So, like, inherently, life and birth are ceremony and are sacred. So, no matter where you are, that's going to be a sacred experience. And that also requires like our attention and our intention, right? And like how we prepare during the pregnancy, how we connect to our children, most importantly. Because right now there's a lot of focus on like the nursery and like the this and the that. And I think we really need to take pregnancy and as an invitation, an initiation invitation to like remember our sacredness as women. And so we become empowered through that realization, I think, you know. I mean, pregnancy and birth are an intricate part of the story of humanity, but it doesn't mean it's a very special and sacred and important time in a woman's life, right? Like, we do actually deserve a trophy for this. We deserve an altar, you know, as women. And so, just to like take pregnancy as a time to become educated and connected to your baby, to your partner, whoever's going to be with you at your birth team. So, no matter the setting, um, it's still sacred, it's still a ceremony. But that's still, I always encourage women to choose their birth team wisely and their birth setting wisely, you know. If they are trying to call in this very sacred experience, I do believe home birth is the place. Not to take away from the sacredness of the hospital births too, but um, you generally want to go into ceremony with people that you know and that you feel comfortable with and that are going to support you and that are going to hold space for you, you know, and are not coming in with a lot of fear, but more with a lot of trust, which is a big part of ceremony, right? Because you're going into the unknown, and you want to trust yourself, your children, your ancestors to carry you through this process. So, yeah, just become connected and become educated. And I think uh, this like idea, this like approach of birth also empowers women because they get to know their bodies, they get to know their processes, they get to know pregnancy in a different way that gives them the power to make the choice, you know. So that's, I feel like, a big focus in my work is like to give them that, to remind them of their power and that to remind them that them and their babies are guiding this ceremony, you know, and we're all just holding the space, whether me, the midwife, the OB, whoever is going to be there.
Yeah. And you mentioned a few things like it sounds like there's a practice involved, like a practice of reminding yourself daily to honor the sacred, a practice of honoring your baby and connecting with your baby, practice of connecting with your family or your community or your partner, whoever you hold close to you.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition, it sounds like there's this layer of learning to trust, right? It's like you mentioned, educate yourself, build your birth team. But what stuck out to me was the word trust and how the little bit that I know about traditional ceremonies, and the few ceremonies that I have been to, there is someone who is kind of there to be like a safety or security. I guess it's the ceremonial leader, but there's someone who you can trust and to be there to either guide you or bring you back to center, bring you back to being grounded. Um, so how do you do that? I mean, you said home birth is a great place for that. How do you do that in the birth room? How do you make sure that there is someone there who's always reminding you to trust and to hold it sacred? Like, how do you assemble a birth team, especially if you are going into the hospital, but anywhere, home birth, or what are your uh, what's your advice for assembling the right birth team?
I think you just have to, your body knows. I mean, going back to like pregnancy is an invitation to get embodied, really, like as women. And like you need to listen to that in your body when you're with your birth team. I feel it's important to feel connected, you know, as much as like there's a rhetoric like, well, your doctor is just supposed to keep you and your baby safe. And well, what is safety? You know, like what is safety really? What is going to make a woman feel safe besides getting your vitals and like making sure everything stays like as the literature wants to tell us it should stay. But I think women just need to listen to their bodies, listen to like how they feel when they're sitting with their birth team, and that's gonna help create the ideal birth team. Someone that you feel connected to, someone that you feel trusted with, you know, someone that you think listens to you, someone that it validates your feelings, you know, someone who doesn't have a bunch of fears around birth, but also someone who's not just like whatever resonates with each mother, you know, each mother knows what kind of birth ceremony, birth story they want. And I think it's okay to be choosy and to take your time when you're choosing your team, and to, if you need to interview a whole lot of midwives, like if you need to transfer care, if you need to release your doula, whatever you need to do to make sure you go into your birth team like feeling really trustful of your support people. That's all we're there for, you know. And so again, like taking it back, like we as birth keepers, we have a big influence, but really we play such a small role in the story of this person's child's mother's family's life. So if a mother needs to transfer care, she should do that, and she should not worry about hurting our feelings. She should not worry about it's so late. She should, you know, because she's gonna remember this birth story, you know, and forever. And it's important, you know, so just prioritize her feelings, I think.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us that if you want to transfer. If you want to release your doula, because I was talking to a few different people about this, and there's many different layers to why people stay with their birth team even when they don't feel like it's a good place for them. And one of them was decision making. You know, there's a lot of decision making that goes into changing things and a lot of learning. And sometimes that can be overwhelming. But I think you touched on one that we didn't talk about, which is maybe a little bit of guilt of letting other people down. And the reminder that you just gave us that if you know if we're the one who's giving birth, we are what everybody's there for, right? And learning to listen to our voice and our needs is only going to help us become better parents, become create better families, raise children in a better way. So it's birth, I think, is an opportunity. Pregnancy is an opportunity for us to have, like, I don't want to say selfish boundaries, but realize that it matters, like what we want um, in our bodies. The babies are in our bodies. So realizing and remembering, and maybe even realizing for the first time that everything centers around you as the person who's carrying this child and the person who's giving birth to this child. So, yeah, thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Oh, okay. Uh, One thing that I wanted to ask was you mentioned mother's blessings and blessing ways to celebrate in a ceremony, you know, the pregnancy. What is that about, and what are good times to implement ceremonies and sacred times to honor what's happening along the way of pregnancy, birth, postpartum?
Yeah. Well, I think I think, back to what we were just talking about, it's the whole process is just an invitation to step into our sacred, and to like remember our divinity as women. Like we are this great portal of life, and we carry our families, and we so on carry our communities. So I think even from like conception, preconception, I mean, if you know you want to call a baby in, that's when we should begin the ceremony, with the full moons, call our baby in, talk to our baby. That creator, the earth, the waters know that you are calling in the sacred being, right? I think, as people of the earth, we do believe and understand, and I feel deeply in my soul that our children are with us from before even conception, right? From preconception. So to begin that ceremony like that is like so special, begin your ceremony of conception. And then when you make love, make it sacred, right? And then when you know you're pregnant, just start the ceremony. I mean, live the ceremony. So talk to your baby, connect to your baby every day, even if it's hard, like we mentioned early. I think spirituality needs to be practical. And so that word comes from the root practice. So just practice, like talk to your baby, even if at first you don't feel like that, like connection, you will feel that, pray to the waters. There's water surrounding your baby. We know that water carries energy. So that's a big one. I'm always like, talk to your baby's waters and infuse them with pure love and harmony and peace. Let your babies know they are in a sacred place, and remind them how protected they are. And then, of course, there's like the more practical, like form ceremonies, like the blessing way, which is an opportunity to really honor the process of maternity and to pray for the mother's life. The original blessing way ceremony is the Ne Navajo ceremony. That's actually to bless anyone's life. As far as from what I've learned from one of my brothers, Ronnie the Ne, he's a roadman, and he shared this with me. It's to bless mothers, aunties, people who are going through things and need a blessing way, you know, need their way to be blessed. But it's definitely a big moment is to do it for pregnant women. So just to gather the woman in her community and to bless her with prayers and infuse her with love, and to have different elements that remind not only the mother, but the whole community how sacred this is. That's a big blessing for me, doing these blessing way ceremonies, and seeing like the mom's family, like, wow, remember, how sacred it really is to carry life. And so the blessing way is a beautiful opportunity for the woman's whole community to honor that process in her life, and hopefully awaken that so that it can carry on in their lives too. And yeah, and then there's of course the birth, which is, I think, the first ceremony of all of us as human. Not only for the mom, it's a ceremony for mama, but largely for the person baby being born. Like, it's a ceremony surrounding their initiation into this earth, into this belonging. So of course that's, no matter where you are or what you do, that's going to be a sacred ceremony. And then in postpartum, there's the first 40 days, which is where we really focus on that mom baby bonding and healing, and really enforces and reinforces that unity between the family, and then also continues to call community in, which is another big blessing of birth as ceremony. It's like it strengthens not only the mother and the baby, it strengthens the family, the community, and then hopefully all the peoples, right? Like that's what our intention is. So, and then we have the closing, la cerrada de caderas, which is um, a ceremony after the mother gives birth, which helps to reincorporate this mom as a new person, and not only physically, but also emotionally, spiritually, help to close that ceremonial space. Like in all ceremonies, we have a closing, we close the space. So in postpartum, we also do a closing ceremony. And so those are some practical, like actual ceremonies that we hold. Um, but again, it's all an invitation to live in ceremony with our children and our families.
So, following what you feel, staying connected with your body, following what you feel.
I know I go so deep. I like I'm like going. I hope I'm not taking too long with each question.
No, no, it's great because, you're giving, from your place of true experience. And I know that you've walked this path for such a long time. And for people like such as me, who I stumbled upon Blessing Way through, reading it off the internet. So it's like, you know, you just kind of piece together what you can. And then my midwife had given some Blessing Way ceremony. So she prepared one for me, which was really beautiful. But I guess I feel like I'm just trying to pull things from wherever I can. And to hear you say that it's really about connecting, it's refreshing, because if you're connecting from within and just remembering to hold things sacred, then no matter what you do, it can be ceremony, like you said. And it's great. It's great. It's a simple way to approach it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You also work with placentas. Do you want to tell us a little bit about like honoring the placenta and what ways that people do it, or that you work with the placenta, and what the benefits are?
Yeah. I I love the placenta as a sacred organ. I think it also brings us back, and it's a teaching. It's like our first teaching and lesson of belonging, and of connection to this earth. And as women, we carry this organ that looks exactly like the trees, that our mother gives us to provide the oxygen. And then it's like we're doing the same. We're just like a super extension of our mother. And yeah, the placenta is a blessing and a lesson in belonging to our mothers and to the earth. It's our first environment where we get to really know, the sacred element of water. And it's like it's an organ that is specifically made for both mother and babies, and it's been revered. It's in a lot of like the sacred ancient books, as like even in the Bible there's scriptures about the placenta and sacred ways to honor it, and to yeah, to honor it and remember it as an extension of the mother and our belonging to her. So I always like to make sure the placentas don't end up in a bio waste hazardous bag. And there's many different ways that people can honor the placenta, whatever feels like really in alignment to their life. But it's from the moment that the placenta is born, instead of that rushing to make that disconnection from the baby and the placenta. I think it's always a good um, opportunity to take a moment to honor this connection that the baby had to this first environment that provided everything they needed, and also gave them a beautiful image to sustain them, right? Like they're looking at this really beautiful tree and these roots for the whole 9 months. And of course, they can't clearly see it, but when we think a little bit deeper, I think we understand, right? That connection that it gives us to the earth. So beginning by making that cord clamping or burning or cutting very intentional, and having it be a sacred moment, not just be this like rushed experience where it's like, let's rush to this sacred connection. No, let's take a moment. Let's honor this, el vínculo. I don't know how to say that in English, but it's like the connection between these sacred beings. And you can either burn the placenta cord, which is, inviting this other sacred element, the fire, which illuminates all things under the universe. And it's just much gentler. You're not using these sterile tools. It takes a little while longer. You can sing to the baby, you can talk to the baby. I always like to pray in my heart. And of course, I conversate with my family. So if any family doesn't want me to pray, I honor their spaces, and I'm very mindful to not bring like my whole medicine box with me to every birth. But it's all sacred. So we keep it sacred however it is. So that disconnection from the placenta is important. You can also cut the cord with, obsidian knives over corn and then take the corn and plant it. And so now this corn is carrying your baby's DNA, right? And like keeping it alive. It's a extending that belonging to the earth. Or you can take your placenta as a whole and plant it on the earth. Depending on whether you have a woman or a son, you plant different trees with the placentas. There's many ways to honor our placentas. Just honor it. Don't if you don't want to consume it, you don't have to, but planting it is just really beautiful. Your children always will have earth to go back to and belong to, wherever that plant is, or bush, or whatever it is that you plant with it. And of course, you can consume it, and it's really beneficial for postpartum medicines. We observe that most placental mammals after birth eat their placenta. So since we are animals as well, we have been doing that for a couple years now, a lot of years now. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence and stories from mothers who really like feel the benefits of consuming their placenta. So it has iron and oxytocin and prolactin and a bunch of other hormones that help this process, this transition into postpartum, you know? And it's medicine made by you, from you, for you. So it's safe. Generally, you you think you know your body, you know what you've been consuming this whole time. Placental anatomy and physiology is very smart. So the way the blood is circulating, has a purpose. And so when you consume it, it's just full of benefits, in my opinion, in my experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You reminded me what you said about, taking the placenta, putting it in the earth. I've been really honored to be able to participate in some ceremonies that were handed down from Osana Fast Wolf, and I believe she's Apache, and she crossed over pretty recently actually. So just wanted to say her name out loud. And some of the teachings that were handed down through her, that she passed on and came to me through other people, were that you don't put any of your body waste, your fingernails, your hair, your menstrual blood. You don't want to throw any of that away and let it be somewhere unknown. So yeah, it just reminded me of that wisdom of putting things back to the earth, and bringing things, keeping things close to where you are too. Um, and then the other thing that you reminded me of is that I've had three babies. Two of them we cut the cord, and the third one we burned the cord in a cord burning box. And
Mm.
the box contains the flame, the candle. We light the candle, put the candle in the box, and so there's no way for the heat to transfer to the baby or anything like that. And that, we didn't plan anything intentional about it. There was no plan for us to make prayer or anything, but it was just like as soon as that flame hit the cord, you could feel something in the room. It just became so silent, and it felt so connected, and everyone who was in the house just kind of gathered instantly and just started saying all of these beautiful blessings for the baby, and just saying what was in their heart. But it was like the flame was pulling it out or something. There was something really special about that. And it was nice because I didn't intend for any of that to happen. And it was nice to feel it happen all on its own. And it was a pretty long time. I mean, maybe 25, 30 minutes. And it just was a nice pause for everybody, especially for me who had just given birth. And there was this whirlwind of like bliss and exuberance and fatigue, and then the candle was lit and the cord was burning, and it was like, I don't know. Yeah, it was an exhale that I wasn't ready to take on my own.
Yeah.
So it was refreshing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you too.
It's like it's inherently sacred. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
nothing we need to do. And that's like a pure testimony. Like the moment the fire, we invite our grandpa fire, and it's like, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Um, okay, Vicky. So, what is your best piece of advice for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum? What's your top advice?
My top advice for pregnancy would be to become embodied. you know, to focus like a lot more on like the internal preparation and the internal invitation than in like, because it can be really stressful, trying to get prepared for this like big arrival. And we often forget to just like slow down and connect to our babies and get embodied and really listen, take this opportunity to like experience these really precious moments where it's just like our babies in our womb. And I mean, there's like a literal heart in your womb. I mean, if that doesn't get much more healing than that. So like take that opportunity to remember that. And of course, yeah, just get connected, just get embodied. There's a lot of practical advice that I think we all get as women, and I think I'd like to leave it at that.
Okay, and the last question is, what is something that they don't tell you about pregnancy, birth, postpartum?
Hmm, how sacred it is, that it is a ceremony. Um, yeah, they really don't tell us that. I mean, I'm really grateful for like the birth keeping community where I think making noise right now, and that's singing songs, and that's really good. But since obstetrics became like the main, way of getting maternity care in the United States, like they don't really tell us how sacred and special this is, and to connect to our babies. And yeah. And as far as postpartum, get community. They don't tell us to make sure we make a tapestry of support, and we're gonna need it because we were never meant to do this alone, any of it. We're supposed to be in community. So